Look, I'm about to tell you something, and when you first hear it, it's going to sound weird. You might even think, what is this guy talking about? But hear me out until the end, because this affects your wallet, your job, maybe even your life. Oil is currently below 70, cheap oil. And while everyone's celebrating, I'm terrified. Why am I terrified? Because I've seen this before. I saw it in 2008, I saw it in 2014, I saw it in 2019, and every single time the same thing happened. First came cheap oil, then economic crisis, then war, then pandemic. Every time, same pattern, same story. And now it's 2026. Oil is below 70 again. And I'm telling you, this time won't be different. History repeats itself. When oil prices drop, the global economy collapses. This isn't coincidence. This is a pattern. And nobody's talking about it. Mainstream media isn't discussing it. Economists are ignoring it. But the numbers are there. The historical data is there. What happened before the 2008 oil crash? What happened before the 2014 oil collapse? What happened during the 2019 cheap oil period? I'm going to walk you through all of it. And at the end, you decide, is this really coincidence or is something else going on? All right, let's begin. You remember 2008, right? That year, I noticed something. Everyone's saying mortgage crisis, banks are failing. Yeah, true, but nobody mentioned this. 6 months before that crisis, oil had collapsed. Here's what happened. July 2008, oil hit 147, record high. Everyone's panicking. Oil's running out. It's going to 200. Sell your cars. All that. Then you know what happened? It crashed. 6 months down to 73% drop. Fastest oil crash in history. And right at that moment, Lehman Brothers collapsed. Now I'm asking you, coincidence? You might say yes, coincidence. Okay, one example could be coincidence, but let me show you another one. Oil dropped from 110 to 50, 6 months. Another massive drop. And then what happened? The Middle East exploded. Syria war hit its peak. ISIS emerged. Yemen collapsed. Libya descended into chaos. The refugee crisis started. Millions of people flooded into Europe, you might say, but these are unrelated things. I used to think that too, honestly, until I saw 2019. Oil dropped from 75 to 60. Small drop this time. Not a big deal, they said. 3 months later, a virus emerged in China. And you know what happened next. The world shut down, the economy stopped, millions died. Now I'm asking you again, 3 times a coincidence? Look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm just looking at the numbers. And the numbers are telling me cheap oil isn't good, it never was. But why? Why is cheap oil bad? Let me explain something simple. When oil gets cheap, what happens? Oil companies lose money. What does a company do when it's losing money? Fires workers, cuts investment, can't pay its debts. Then what? Unemployment rises. Suppliers go bankrupt. Banks get filled with bad loans. You're saying, but this only affects the oil sector. No, oil is connected to everything. Transportation depends on oil. Plastic depends on oil. Medicine depends on oil. Your phone depends on oil. When the oil sector collapses, it spreads in waves. But the real problem is something else. You know what happened in 2008? When oil companies were failing, their bonds failed too. Who was holding those bonds? Banks, investment funds, your retirement fund. So when oil collapsed, it wasn't just oil companies that got hurt. The entire financial system got hurt. And the domino started. When banks took losses, they stopped lending. When credit stopped, companies couldn't invest. When there was no investment, growth stopped. When growth stopped, unemployment rose. When unemployment rose, consumption dropped. When consumption dropped, the economy collapsed. A vicious cycle. And once it starts, it's very hard to stop. Now let's look at 2014. The story is a bit different there, but the outcome is the same. When oil dropped, which countries got hurt? Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, Venezuela. What do these countries have in common? Their economies depend on oil. When oil is high, these countries are strong. They have money. Strong military, happy population. But when oil drops, what happens? Budget deficit. No money. Salaries are delayed. People take to the streets. Governments under pressure. And in times like that, what do politicians do? They make a show of force in foreign policy. They find enemies. Sometimes they start wars. Why did Saudi Arabia intervene in Yemen? Because oil revenue dropped, internal pressure increased. They needed to show victory somewhere. Why did Russia militarily intervene in Syria? Because their economy had collapsed. Putin was looking for legitimacy. Why did Iran become aggressive in the region? Because their economy had collapsed. Putin was looking for legitimacy. Because their economy had collapsed. Putin was looking for legitimacy. Because their economy had collapsed. Putin was looking for legitimacy. Why did Iran become aggressive in the region? because oil had dropped, but at the same time, their rivals had also weakened. So the oil drop didn't directly start wars, but it created the conditions. And the result? Millions of refugees, hundreds of thousands dead. Now let's get to 2019. The story there is even more interesting. Oil only dropped 20%, small drop. No problem, they said. But at that time, the global economy was already fragile. There were trade wars, growth was slowing, debt levels were very high, the system was already sick. And the oil drop was showing that. Then the virus came, and it was a final blow to a sick system. If the economy had been healthy, would the virus's impact have been this big? I don't know. But the oil drop was telling us the economy was sick. Nobody listened. So up to here, okay? 3 examples, 3 crises. Before all of them, cheap oil, patterns clear. And now it's 2026. Oil is below 70. And I'm telling you, this time will be the same too. But there's something different this time. This time we can be prepared. Because now we know, we've seen the pattern, we know the history. So what's happening right now? Let me show you. American shale oil companies are failing. Last year, 40% reported losses. Why? Because 70 isn't profitable for them. They need 75, 80. So right now they're producing at a loss. How much longer can they go? I don't know. But not forever. Investment stopped. Last year, oil investments dropped 15%. Companies aren't optimistic about the future. If they don't invest, what happens? Production decreases in the future. If production decreases, prices skyrocket. But then nobody will be prepared. Look at financial markets. Oil bonds ratings are dropping. Investors are fleeing. Nobody wants to lend money to oil companies. What does this mean? Companies can't find money. If they can't find money, how will they invest? And look at the geopolitical side. The Middle East has never been this unstable. Israel-Hamas. Houthis attacking the Red Sea. Iran-Israel tensions. Russia-Ukraine in its 3rd year. But why isn't oil rising when there's war, you might ask? Very good question. Normally war raises oil prices, but right now it's not rising. Why? Because these wars aren't cutting oil supply yet. Notice the word yet. They're not cutting it yet, but they can at any moment. One wrong move, one missile, one straight closure, and oil goes to 100. Markets know this, but they're waiting. And while waiting, price stays low. Now let's get to the most important question. Who's winning from this situation? China is winning. Last year they bought 2 billion barrels of oil, record. What are they doing with this oil? Stockpiling in storage. Why? Because they know it'll be more expensive in the future. But they're not just buying oil. They made deals with Venezuela. They made deals with Iran. They made deals with Russia. What kind of deals? You sell me oil, I'll buy from you at today's price for 10 years. Type deals. You know what China's doing? Preparing for the future. Even if oil hits 100 tomorrow, China has guaranteed supply. India is doing similar. Buying Russian oil at 50% discount, they don't care about Western sanctions. I'm neutral, I'm doing business, they say. Russia's winning too. But there are sanctions, you say. Yes, there are, but they're not working. Russia's selling its oil through what's called the dark fleet system. Tankers turn off their GPS. They hide which port they loaded from. And eventually the oil even reaches Europe. Last year, Russia made 300 billion from oil, despite sanctions. So who's losing? America's losing. The shale industry is collapsing. Companies are failing. The energy independence dream is over. Saudi Arabia is losing. Their budget is calculated based on 80-90 oil. At 70, they're running a deficit. They're burning through reserves. How much longer can they go? 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. But not forever. Europe is losing. Sanctioning Russia but buying expensive LNG, high inflation, economy shrinking. So the game is asymmetric. Some are winning, some are losing. And how do asymmetric games end? In conflict. Now let me give you 3 scenarios for the next 6 months. Scenario 1, silent collapse. Oil keeps dropping to 65, maybe 60. Companies start failing, unemployment rises, credit markets freeze. But it happens slowly. You don't immediately notice in daily life. 6 months later, a year later, you feel it, like 2008 but slower. Probability 40%. Scenario 2, geopolitical shock. A major conflict starts in the Middle East. Maybe Iran attacks nuclear facilities. Maybe Houthis fire a missile at a giant tanker. Oil goes to 100 overnight. Panic buying, energy crisis, stock market crashes, stagflation, probability 35%. Scenario 3, artificial recovery, central banks step in, interest rates to 0. money printing, support for oil companies, price recovers short term, economy seems to recover, but it's not real. Problems are postponed. A bigger crisis comes in 2-3 years. Probability 25%. What's common to all three scenarios? All have collapsed, either now or later, but definitely. Now the most important part, how does this affect you? If you live in America, gas is cheap, good. But your retirement fund might be investing in oil stocks. Those stocks will collapse. If you live in Europe, your energy bill is high. And because oil is low, the Middle East is unstable. What does instability mean? More refugees. If you live in Turkey, your import costs decrease because oil is cheap. Good, but if oil goes to 100 tomorrow, the economy gets shocked. Is there preparation? No. If you're in a developing country, your country might have issued oil-backed bonds. If those bonds collapse, you go to the IMF. Austerity, unemployment, unrest. So wherever you are, this affects you, even if you don't realize it. The next 6 months are critical. February, there's an OPEC meeting. Maybe they'll decide on production cuts. Maybe they won't. In March, US election campaigns start. Oil becomes political. In April, China's reserve might be full. If so, they stop buying. May, June is summer season. Normally demand rises. But if it doesn't, very bad. If oil drops to 65, alarm. To 60, very bad. To 55, disaster. Let me give you a historical example. In 1973, Arab-Israeli war, OPEC embargo, oil quadrupled, energy crisis, stagflation, lasted 10 years. In 1979, Iranian Revolution. Oil production stopped, price doubled, crisis again. Back then, supply was cut, prices rose. Now it's the opposite. Supply exists, price is low, but the result will be the same. Why? Because low prices kill production. In the future, there's no supply. Then prices skyrocket, and then nobody's prepared. In the 70s, the shock came suddenly. This time the shock is coming slowly, but that doesn't make it less dangerous. It makes it more dangerous because nobody's preparing. So is there a solution? Honestly, I don't know. There's no easy answer. There's a dilemma. If you raise oil prices, consumers get hurt. Inflation rises. There's a political cost. If you keep oil prices low, producers fail. There's a supply crisis in the future. That crisis is bigger. Either take small pain now or big pain later. Politicians always choose later because now loses votes. But when you keep postponing later, eventually an unbearable pain comes. So what can you do? First, be aware. You're watching this video, good. But it's not enough. Tell people around you, say cheap oil isn't good, they'll call you crazy, doesn't matter. 6 months from now, you'll be proven right. Second, prepare financially. Review your retirement fund. If it's heavy in oil, diversify. Buy gold, physical gold. Hold foreign currency. Build cash reserves. Cash to cover 3-6 months of expenses. Third, track geopolitical developments. What's happening in the Middle East? What's China doing? What decisions is OPEC making? These affect your wallet. Fourth, don't hope. I'm serious. Hope is dangerous in this situation. You think, maybe it'll get better. It won't. History shows that. Instead of hope, prepare. Let me give you one final metaphor. The world economy is like a sinking ship. The ship is slowly taking on water. But most passengers don't realize, because the water's in the lower decks. On the upper deck, everything looks normal. The orchestra is playing. People are dancing. In the lower deck, engineers are saying, the ship is sinking, but nobody's listening. There's no water. Everything's fine, they say. Then suddenly, the water reaches the upper deck. Then everyone panics. They look for life jackets. But it's too late, because nobody prepared. Cheap oil is that water. In the lower deck, slowly rising, you don't see it because you're on the upper deck. You're dancing. You're saying, cheap gas, how nice. But the water is coming. And when it comes, it'll come very fast. Now, one last question for you. What are you going to do? Keep dancing or start looking for a life jacket? The answer is yours. But know this, the clock is ticking. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Cheap oil was never good news. It wasn't in 2008. It wasn't in 2014. It wasn't in 2019. And it won't be in 2026. History repeats itself. The pattern is there. You just have to look. Thanks for watching. If this video added value for you, hit that like button. If you want others to see it, share it, because nobody's telling you this information. Mainstream media isn't talking about it, but the truth is out there. And when the next crisis hits, don't say, nobody told me, because I told you. See you next time.